Sure, sir. Happy New Year. So, okay, today we'll start another topic, functions. So, I believe we have good coverage on data structures or collections, one of the very core topic of Python. Because without data structures or functions, I mean, sorry, data structures or collections, you cannot imagine this Python, any Python development, like let it be data science or let it be data engineering, let it be automations, let it be out testing, anywhere. So this is one of the core area. So that is maybe try to master it or practice it as much as possible, friends. That would be simple. So now coming to the function. So what is a function? So let's start discussing about functions. So you can see here the so function is something which performs some task or some which implements some logic. So that simply speaking, that is what a function is. It takes input and performs something and provides output. You can see the diagram. This is interesting. So that's what function does here. Okay, and let's get into the Python functions. Not only Python function, any function. What it does is the purpose of function is write reusable pieces or chunks of code. So, and that is nothing but we call functions. So it is nothing really new for us. Whatever we did so far, same thing, same code or statements. We just put it in some block, and that block generally we call it as function. And functions are reusable. Once you find we are using same code repeatedly, the same code again and again, in such cases, keeping such code in functions or keeping such code into methods is very helpful for us because once you create a function, we can call it any number of times or we can reuse it. So that is the advantage with functions. So, and again, here if you see, we must call functions. Another important thing is once you create a function, we have to call function. Anyhow, we discussed that once we start doing examples or programs. In the program, again, we talk about all this, revisit these points one by one. So point is once you create function, another important thing is we must call it. And that calling is called invoking. Got it right, friends? Next one. Any function will have a name and it might have parameters 0 or more. 0 means we may or if you want, we provide parameters, else it can be a default function. It can have a doc string. This is optional again. And parameters are optional. It's not mandatory. And functions have a body and functions return something. Again, name is mandatory, body is mandatory. Returning is optional. Doc string is optional. Parameters are optional. And that is a quick idea about functions, friends. And actually, the purpose of function is it is used to implement what it is a just how can we define a function? Function is a subprogram which performs a specific task, and it is a reusable program, or it is a reusable subprogram. So that's it. Once you declare a function, you must call it. Functions are not self-executable. We have to call functions. So that's the quick idea about functions, friends. Next one. So this is the simple example of functions, how it look like. So this is the small example. Any function, this is how you define functions. Any function starts with the keyword def, which means define. Def represents functions. In Python, if you want to identify functions, any function is functions are declared with this keyword def, which means define. And then that function name you can see here, right side to that, and then parameters, and then colon. You know, right? Python don't have braces or blocks. Then that blocks are represented with indentation. And you can see the indented function block here. And this under that function, this is function definition. Whatever that is there at the top of this function name, everything, that line we call it as function definition. Under that, return maximum among A and B. This is actually function doc string. And these doc strings, you can see we created with our Python codes, triple quotes. Okay, doc string provides description about function, friends. So you know, right? So we had already discussed this. We can use this triple quotes in different ways. One for writing comments, two for declaring some strings, multi-line strings, three again to declare doc strings. And here you can see we can provide a doc string here, which acts as a description about function. So that is another important thing. Next, after that, you can see here. So here in this definition, the def is a keyword and max is a function name and ab are arguments here. We have two arguments, a comma b, and these are called formal or dummy arguments. Sorry, friends. Suddenly there is a laptop got shut on us. So can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Let me share my screen and let's continue. Yeah. So we are talking about functions here. So this is the body actually up under that function definition, and we have here body, and you can understand that here that if greater than all this is a body, and we have written statement here. So this is conditional return. You can see here. So anyhow, we talk more about it. And finally, we have to call function here. This is how we call functions. We'll see that anyhow with clear examples. So this is the quick idea about the anatomy of function. Okay. So next one, let's move to the next slide. So this is a simple example. So before this, what I do is I'll just take a quick little this thing on that. So what I do is let's so sorry. Okay, let's see this now. This is a function, and generally, apart from what we have seen in these examples, these are really nice. So what we do is before we go with them, let's have a little more detailed analysis. What is per exact purpose of functions? So apart from what we have observed now, so the purpose of functions is we can break down a large problem into small chunks of programs, and those chunks we can call them as these functions. That is one thing. And the other advantage of functions is modularization. So we can break down program into small programs, which helps to add modularization. And also, it is actually function is a subprogram which avoids repetition of code. Just observe this, friends. So this is something people ask in interviews. What is the difference between a function and inheritance? So function is something avoids repetition of code, and inheritance avoids repetition of data. So this is the difference actually. Data is means variables. So that is the difference between inheritance and functions. And debugging becomes easy with functions, and functions reduces length of program. These are the advantages. And we have two types of functions in any programming language, not just Python: default and parameterized. Default function means function without parameters, and the syntax look like this here. See, friends, def, that function name, and then this empty parenthesis and statements under that. And the example is this, you can see here. So you can simply say this. So we can define like this, something like say hello, and then print it, print something under that. Okay, let's start check it, testing one by one here. So what is the default function? This is the syntax: def function name and then statements under that. So open this. Let's create a quick check on that default, and we can quickly analyze that each and every bit and piece in that function with an example. Now right click here, just create that Python package one more time and name it as functions, so that whatever we are doing, everything will be in the. So right click, okay, new, and then Python package, and name it as a function handling. Anything is fine, but just name it as function handling. Okay, and then after that, just add one more is a new function types, or anything. You can just keep naming it default function parameterize, something like that. Now let us take one example. Default means what? So we are just discussing on default functions, functions without parameters. So functions without parameters. So we can create functions in two ways. So either we can have functions with parameters or without parameters. Now let's talk about this default. See here, the something like say hello. This is a small function, and then colon, and then you can just print something. Okay, welcome to functions. Okay, something like this. This is a simple Python function. So, and then once you implement it, and generally inside this function, you can declare reusable statements. whichever the code you think is repeated, all that statements you can declare under this function. And once you define those statements, you can call this function like this, say hello. And this is how we can create a simple function. And here, what are the different things that are present in function? This is the def. Anywhere when you declare a function, this keyword is important. This def is important. Just a minute, friends. I think, yeah. So this is the one. We define a function with def keyword, and then this is function name. And this is user choice. So this function name, you can name any, you can provide any meaningful name, and then it should have parentheses. This is must. And inside this parentheses, do you have any variables? No variables, right? Then this is default. Under that, you provide or declare with statements. And this is function body, and this is function definition. All that function name, definition, and parameters list. This is a definition. And this is function calling. You can name this as a function calling, or you can also call caller. Okay. And here, this is function definition. I'm just providing a bit of anatomy. Okay. Definition. And then this is function body. Whatever the statements you declare under function. Okay, this is function body. All these statements under function, we can call this as function body. Okay, now you can run this. So this is the execution flow. Put a debugger here, wherever you're calling a function. Right click on that and then debug it. I just want to show you how the execution of function looks like. So now when you start debugging, always the control comes to the caller. And from caller, it goes to the function and executes the code inside function. Again, it comes back. And this time we are not using any return statement because return statement is optional. Even parameters are optional. That's why this function is default function. Okay, friends. Why it is default? It doesn't have any parameters here. And also returning is optional. We'll talk about this probably in today's session itself. And this is a caller. Now from here, I want to get into this function. Then what is that I should do? Don't use this one. Step over. If anywhere, if you find some function call, a genuine function call, then you have to, you can see, you have to choose step into. When you say step into, it get into that function or it jumps to that function, executes statements in that function and comes back. Once you say step into, again, don't say step into, you can go line by line again. You can say step over. When you say step over, it executes all lines in the function line by line. And then again, it comes back to the caller. Now you should understand one important thing here. What is happening with functions? When there is a function, we have this function jumps here. You can see here. We have this control jumps. Technically, we call this as control jumps. This is what happens when you make a function call. The control jumps from that caller to the function, execute that code. Again, the caller, that control come back to that caller. And these are called control jumps. Very important. You need to understand that. Got it right, friends? This is just execution flow of functions. So this is default function without parameters. Now, second type is, what is it? Parameterized function. And it's almost default and parameterized are almost similar. Only difference is parameterized function has just parameters. A function with parameters is parameterized function. And this is the example you can see here. Sorry, friends. DEF. Again, define function name. You can provide any function, any meaningful function name, following a bit of standard while defining that function name. You can see here, right? A bit of camel case here. starting should be lowercase and every word inner starting letter should be uppercase. Or else you can separate everything with underscore, everything in lowercase. Anything should be fine, friends. Okay. Now, this is the syntax of function, a parameterized function. So here inside brackets, you have with these variables. Like you can pass how many ever you want. Depends on your necessity of logic. And here these variables in this bracket, you can see function bracket. We call them as parameters. And also we can call these as dummy variables or formal parameters or local variables. What are local? Either variables declared inside this parenthesis or inside function. We call them as local variables. Then the question is what is the what exactly are local variables? Variables which are used within function and they are visible only to that function. Local variables are not visible outside, friends. If you want, you can return that result of local variables from this function. But these variables are visible only within that function, and these are just can be used within that function for some kind of logic implementation. Got it right, friends? So that is the simple idea about local variables. And generally local variable scenario exists when you have this topic of functions. And this is the idea. If you want, you can add return statements here again as usual. We'll talk about it as a third thing in our discussion today. By the end of this discussion, you'll get an overall complete picture of these functions, default, parameterized, and then returning functions, returning values without returning values. All that we cover everything in today's session. And this is how we call parameterized function. Once we define a function like this is how we call parameterized function. Any function just call with function name and then just pass parameters in that function call. And here how many values you should pass here, that depends on the definition of function. Suppose the function definition has 3 parameters, pass 3 values. 4 parameters, pass 4 values. 2 parameters, pass 2 values. Means what here? See here, when you are calling a function, how many parameters should we pass here? Depends on function definition. If definitely here number of parameters in the definition should match with number of parameters in the caller. That is important. Or number of values you pass from caller. If you pass one value more or one value less, it leads to error. Unless if you have different other setup like declaring default parameters or variable length arguments. In some exceptional cases, it is fine. But when you are defining regular functions with the normal parameters, then this number of parameters in definition should match with number of values you are passing from caller. This is important. Okay, let's do a small example that gives you a quick idea about default function. This is, sorry, about parameterized function. This is default, right? Let's create one more function, which is nothing but, what is it? Parameter function. Okay, these are just basics, friends. And later on, we'll just slowly get into the little deeper this thing of functions as well. So how do you define this DEF sum? You can say some sum, okay, or some addition. This is a function which is used to perform addition of two numbers, and this is what this is parameterized function. Okay, and then you can take two parameters a, b, and if you want, you can define a doc string. What is that doc string? This is to find just a simple doc string, sum of two numbers. Okay, a comma b. I'll show you how this doc string appear when you are working with functions. So next after that, once you create doc string, this is optional. It's not like mandatory to define doc string, but it's always a good habit to declare doc string. Just an FYI, You can practice this or at least have this idea because this is needed when you are writing real code in development. So after that, logic, it's a simple thing. You can say C equal to A plus B. Okay, and then print F colon. The sum is simply you can say and parentheses and then just pass the result there. Here I'm just printing, but in reality, we don't print, we don't use this prints in this kind of functions or methods. You can call with any name, friends. The function or method is not really different, right? So we generally don't prefer to use prints. Here while learning or while doing quick testing, we put prints. Of course, even in development, we use prints. It's not like we don't use prints. But point is, once testing is completed, we don't use prints. Generally, these functions, these kind of functions which implement logic, return these results. Return in most of the cases, return statement is must prints. You got it right. But anyhow, we'll go that step by step. But for now, we are just printing our output here, just as C here. So we are done with this. Now after this, what do? You have to call you in this function. What is that again? This is definition. This has two parts. Definition has two parts. One is function name and the second one is parameter list. Okay. And def is must to define any function in Python. And this is doc string. You can see here. This is definition. Okay. Put it in under comment. And what is this here? Second one, this is doc string. We are just doing a little postmortem here. This is doc string. And this is logic. Okay, or yeah, logic, let it be. And printing output. And this whole part, whatever that is there inside function, we can call this as a body again. So again, this is also a body of function. Next after that, once you create function, let's run this now. See here. It won't work by itself. You have to call it, friends. So how do you call function? Simple. By using this function name, just copy this, put it here. Sorry, friends. And then pass how many parameters I am declaring with function? Two parameters. Then while calling this function, I should pass two values, something like 1, comma 2. And here this function is not returning anything. The next topic is return topic. You get much more deeper idea about how to use return and what is the need for returning and how to capture these values returned by a function. We'll talk about it in the next few minutes. But this is how we declare a parameterized function and we call like this by passing these values from through color. And this is function color. Okay. Now here, how many parameters we are passing? Two parameters. And why should we pass only two? Because we have just two here. And this should match. Otherwise, suppose you pass just one value, see here. Now you try to run this. Now you have an error. What is the type error? Addition missing one required positional argument. And here read this statement clearly. By default, these are all positional parameters. What is it, friends? These are all positional parameters. So here, why this error? Because the number of parameters in the function is not matching with parameters in the color. So how many I should pass here? Two. So now run this again. Now you can see sum is 3. So this is all about the full postmortem of a function. Suppose if you want to add another function, you can declare one more here. Okay, that is again multiple functions. How to create multiple functions. We'll talk about it one by one. Now this is all about default. What is default function? What is parameterized function? The next topic is what, friends? The next topic is returning value from a function. So what is it? We are talking about parameterized function and returning values. How do you do that? We return values by using a keyword. We return values from a function by using a keyword written here, friends. So return keyword, what is it? Return value from a function. Okay, friends. Already these are all there. I'm just quickly wrapping up. Okay. And the syntax look like this. Just return space, that variable name, var name or value. And here, like in other languages, here, what is that? This is little different. If it is other language, we can have only just one return or conditional returns. That's all. And also we return one value at a time in other languages. But here we can return multiple values. Got it right, friends? We can return multiple values in Python. Well, I will just see all that one by one. So what is written here? So generally in real programming, once you define function, that function return that result back. Whatever logic you implement here, we don't just keep that in that function. And this logic should, the result, this result, whatever we get here, we should return this. And to return that, simply what we do, we add a return statement and just say that C. And what happens? When you say return, immediately that return will return that result, whatever result you are returning here, back to the caller. Now, what is that caller? What is that we do at caller? We have to assign this caller to some variable, something like result equal to addition. So whenever you think that function is returning some result, make sure you assign this caller to some variable, some meaningful variable that should be fine. But assigning caller to some variable is very important. What happens now? Once this caller go to this function, execute this function, while coming back again, it will get that result back. So that if you assign this caller to a variable, whatever result returned by this function is stored into this variable. So finally, what you have to do, just print it, print again f. See, you can just add this. This sum is okay, and then you can simply say you can add result here. This is returning value from a function. Now right click and run this. Now you can see here we got output for 2 times. One time when you from the print statement inside the function, and another one the from the after color here. Whatever result you assign to color, once you are printing it again, you get this second output. So this is how we have to define function. And this is actual way of creating functions. And this print is really not required. But in testing, while doing testing, quick testing, we put prints. That happens everywhere, even in development. So, but in reality, if you want to make a pure function, this is how it would be. No prints inside that. Once testing is done, we remove all that prints, friends. Generally, we add logging instead of prints in real time in development. So this will be removed back, and this is how the actual function looks like in development. And we call it wherever we want it, and then it returns something assigned to some variable and use it in the subsequent operations. Here we are printing it. In reality, in real time, we use this result somewhere in the subsequent operation, in the next operation. That's how it is. And this is the idea, friends. Okay, next, getting to the PPT here again. You can see this. So even this is another example defining what is that. So checking if a number is even or not and printing it back. So validating even, we can check this, not a problem. Okay, this is conditional. Let's take this. Take this example, finding maximum of two numbers. Now we have seen one scenario. How to create a parameterized function, how to return results. And here we are just using one return statement. So next scenarios is using multiple returns, that is one thing. So what do? You can see here. One is we discussed this multiple return statements are conditional returns. That is one thing. Are conditional return. These are the examples we see now. And also returning multiple values from a function. This is one more scenario we try to discuss. And then after that, once we are very clear with all this, then we jump to the topic of parameter types. And then inner functions and then decorators. There are so many topics. We'll go one by one. So now, so what do we do? Conditional return. So we do one thing. Let's do one thing. Let's add one more program, new Python file, max test. That is not, there is a little typo. Leave it. It's okay, fine. We can continue. So how do you find max? Def max of, to find maximum of two numbers, declare AB. And then how do you implement logic? If A greater than B, this is what again implementing what is this? Parameterized function. Okay, I just write in short, okay? Parameterized function. And also what I'm doing with the conditional returns. And you have multiple returns, but that should be conditional. You cannot return, you cannot have all in one place. Why? I'll talk about it. So conditional returns. Okay. Now you have created a max function with two parameters. How do you find maximum of two numbers? Very simple, right? You just say A greater than B, then return A. If A is big, return A. Else, what is that we need? Else, return B. So you can see here, this time we are using multiple returns here, but not all in one shot. So these are conditional returns. And this is how, if you want to declare multiple returns, this is how we should create multiple returns. Conditional returns should be there. Suppose I don't use else and I try to use two return statements. What is the problem here? Once you say return anywhere, immediately control jumps back from there to the caller. And any other statement after return never get chance to execute. So that is why adding return after any return is useless, is not meaningful. And this code, whatever that is there after the first return after line 4, this becomes unreachable code. Technically speaking, the word is unreachable code. You got it right, friends. So generally, that's why using multiple returns in the under the same block doesn't make any sense. And also, once a return statement is executed, the control is immediately written back from there. And making the any other statement after return as unreachable code. And this is unreachable. Never ever this gets executed and this gets chance for execution. If it is Java, immediately you get an error, or C sharp, you might get error. But Python don't return error, but this doesn't make sense. You got it right, friends. So what is that you should do in such cases? You can have multiple returns, but conditional returns. Not all returns executes in one shot. Either this return or this return should execute. Then what do I do? What do we do? Not I even. This is how we have to define returns. So that when A is big, the return inside if blocks is executed. If B is big, the return inside else block is executed. This is how we can have multiple returns, but conditional returns. And what is the problem if you have all returns, multiple returns under one block? Only one, the first return always have the opportunity to execute. Once we execute return, immediately control return backs to the caller. And any other statement after return never gets chance for execution. And such statements, we call them as unreachable code. So this is the idea of creating a function and doing multiple conditional returns. And finally, what is that you should do? Some result again, result equal to max of some 2 comma 3. Just pass two values and just print here. Okay. Whatever that is there in the result variable, that is the bigger one. So what you can do here, F colon, you can simply say, so this result is bigger. Just simply say. Now right click, run this. Now you can see here. If you want, you can pass these values dynamically by reading from keyboard. It's up to you, friends. You can take two input variables, convert to integer, and pass it to the max function. Excuse me. So you put this one here, debugger. Now debug this program. See this. Sorry, debug max. Now what happens here? So we need to step into it. We don't just run this step over, execute this step into. Now control goes here. 2 greater than 3, true or false. The condition is false here because 2 is not greater than 3. Then the control goes to else block. Then the return in the else block is executed. You can see here now. You see B is bigger. We get output as what is it, friends? So you can see the output here. 3 is bigger, which is nothing but B. So this is the execution flow. Maybe you can alter that result and you can do the debugging. Then you can see a different execution flow again. So this is the idea of what, friends? Idea of how to use multiple returns as, and that too, when you are using that, they has to be declared as conditional returns. So this is the idea. Next scenario, returning multiple values. So do one thing, take one more program. This is about returning multiple, how to use multiple returns in a function. Next scenario, let's take Python file. So functions with function returning multiple values. Okay. How do you do that? Let's see that. Let's take an example again. DEF, you can take anything, friends. Maybe just you use a arithmetic operations, ARI, OPS, okay? And just take two parameters, A comma B. Just let's do 2 or 3 arithmetic ops and return that whole result back. All that results from that arithmetic operations. First addition, some add equal to A plus B over. Second one, difference equal to A minus B. Third one, you can choose product equal to A into B. If you want, you can add more. All that you can perform all mathematical arithmetic operations, division, remainder, all that. But just to demonstrate that example, which is that returning multiple values, 3 is enough for this scenario. Okay, I am doing 3 arithmetic operations, and altogether we have 3 values here. Now I want to return all this, not just add or diff or prod, but I would like to return all these 3 variables. So how do I return it? Simply return add comma diff comma prod. This is how you return multiple values from a function in Python. And we can return multiple values in Python. Maybe Java or C# don't have this kind of thing. But in Python, even there we can do by adding to array or some collection, all that. But in Python, we can do it directly. You have 3 variables and you are doing 3 operations, 3 outputs are there. And I want to return all these 3 outputs back to the caller. Then this is how you can define a function which returns multiple values. Okay, so what do you do right now? This is simple idea. Now, just call this one, add a caller, pass two values, some 10, 20 or 20, 10, anything is fine. And then what do you do? This function returning some result or not? This is returning some result. If it is returning result, this color should be assigned to some variable. So assign it to something like again result equal to. Now, when you just return one value, it is different. When you are returning multiple values, the way it is written is different, friends. There is a slight difference. Okay, we'll do one thing. What if we return multiple values from a function, right? So then all this, we are returning multiple variables, but all these variables are converted to these are all converted to a tuple. So what is that? A collection tuple. And this whole result, all these variables are converted to a tuple, and that tuple is returned as a result to this color. But these are not written as independent values. But what is that? What happens here internally? Your interpreter converts all these values into a tuple and add these values to the tuple. Of course, implicitly again it uses a list. First it append these values to the list, and then that list it converts to tuple, and that tuple it returns back to the caller. This is what happens actually inside memory, right? Or at an interpreter level. Okay, fine. This result this time is a tuple. It's not just a scalar variable, but this is a vector variable. Means it has group of values. Now you print it, and first you can print type of result. See that there. And second thing, you can print the values as is. What is that printer? What is that here? You can just print result here. So that's all. Just print result and leave it like that. Okay. So now print it. See this. Now you can see here. What is the return type of this one? Result is tuple this time. It is not just like int or float or double or anything, but that is tuple. Now you can see the result inside tuple. The first one addition a plus b 10 plus 20 is 30, 10 minus 20 minus 10, 10 into 20, 200. But important point is when you return multiple values from a function, all those values are written as a tuple. You can see in the output as well. This is another important observation, friends. Got it right? So this is the idea about function returning multiple values and how that multiple values are written, how to which data structure these values are converted, right? And how can we check that? All that we can see in this code. Clear now? So this is all idea about these things, friends. Maybe I need to share this code with you. Let me just share it. I'm sharing this with you. Let me just share this one by one. Next, after that, these are all simple programs. These are not really difficult. And second one is max scenario. Okay. Code snippet, put it here and insert, and then next third one, function types. One is default. The other one is parameterized. Okay. This is another example. Okay. That's about all different scenarios about functions, default functions, parameterized, function returning values, returning multiple, using multiple returns, returning multiple values, all that. Okay. Next scenario. What is that? We'll jump to the next topic, friends. I believe we discussed all the core things to start with function. So next one is about types, parameter types of functions. So next topic is function parameter types. So let's add this here to test all that one by one. So function params demo. Okay, we'll just close this, take another example. You can take any simple example to understand these parameters. In general, in Python, we have four different types of parameters. What is that? Positional parameters. By default, all elements are positional. Okay, positional parameters. That is one thing. Second one, default parameters. Okay, default. Third one is third is keyed parameters, and fourth one is variable length arguments. Variable length arguments. In this way, we have four different types of parameters in Python. The first one is already known to you. Difficult to understand. What is the first thing? First one is positional parameters. Let's go with an example, DEF. Okay, and just uh, let's print details of a person. Okay, I just name it as get person, and then I take two parameters. What is that? One is name, second one is age. Just for making you understand clearly what are positional parameters. And by default, per always what we declare with functions are by default positional parameters. As name says, positional means based on that type of parameter, we should choose what value we should pass to such parameters. Okay. Now let us see, just print this. What is that? Print. So first one is name, and then second one is age. Maybe you can add a little description here. Name is, and then for second one, age is. For second one, you can just add here. Sorry, friends. Age is. Just print age. Okay, this is fine. Now, what is that I should do? I'm not returning anything, just printing it directly. Then call this function get person, and for first parameter you pass name, something like okay, some test one comma age, or something like John or Peter or something. Just pass as John. Okay, age some 30. Okay, now this is perfect program because here we are declaring a function with two parameters. The first one is name, second one is age. And we are passing name to first parameter and age to second parameter. Okay, this is perfectly fine. Here order is perfectly defined, and also we are matching with the all the whatever values we are passing are matching with the parameter definitions. Okay, name is John is passed to name, age is passed to this 30, 30 is passed to age. So one more important point is when you are passing values through color. So how these values are passed to this formal parameters are dummy parameters. Always the first parameter is passed to first argument. Second value is passed to second parameter. First value is passed to first parameter. So this is how the passing of values happens with color to method or a function. Got it right, friends? So point is here following order is important. Here I'm properly passing values in order. So when I run this now, I don't have a problem. I get name is John, age is 30. Suppose what is that? I'm using one more. This is test case one. Okay, test case two. This time, what I'm doing is I'm changing the order of parameters. First, I am passing age. Second, I am passing John. But if you see here, of course, this is IDE, so it provides intelligence. But if you see here, somewhere the order is doesn't look perfect. Somewhere order is not doing actually needed this thing, friends. We are missing out something in the order. Actually, here the age should be passed to age parameter, but I just changed the order, flip the order. Then what happens here? Your Python doesn't care about anything. It simply pass 30 to name and John to age. Now run this first. Let's run this. The second test case. If you see the output of second test case, it is saying name is 30, age is John. Does it looks a bit awkward here, right, friends? See here. Is it really looking? I mean, looking good here. Somewhere it doesn't look really well here. We are missing on something. Why? Because we are missing on the order. So point here is when you are working with positional parameters, order is important. And if you don't follow the order, then you get improper output. You don't get expected outputs. Maybe you pass age here and don't expect that that age is directly passed to the age variable. You pass John here, don't expect John to be passed to the name variable. That kind of magic your Python don't do. Always the execution flow of Python is first value is passed to first parameter, second value is passed to second parameter. Also, one more thing in Python is Python don't have it doesn't have explicit typing. Not doesn't. We don't use explicit typing in Python. We can use explicit typing if you think it is needed, but we don't use it. This is dynamically typed. So even though we declare name, name can accept anything in Python. It can accept int or float or double or nick, string or anything, or even a collection. In such cases, what is important? All this discussion is about saying one point, that is, we have to follow order. That is important, and that is what positional parameters are. For positional parameters, what is important is order of values, right? So this is the very important thing. In such cases, you got it right. So this is the idea about positional parameters. So test case 2 definitely is not a valid test case because we are not passing values to the in a right way in a right way. Okay, so this is invalid. This is not valid. This is invalid calling, not a right way of calling that function because the order is missing on passing values. Then what else should we do then? For positional parameters, there is nothing else. You have to properly check and pass parameters. That is important. And developer has to be careful here. That is the only thing. Suppose another scenario, then you might come up with a question. No matter what, however I pass the values, they have to reach right parameters. If they have to reach to right parameters, I pass age as a first parameter. Still, age should go to age. I pass John as second parameter. Still, John should go to name. Then what should I do? If this is your question, then we have to use the next thing in the list is keyed. Default will talk about it. Keyed parameters. Then test case 3. So to avoid this kind of confusion, one other advantage, one other kind of thing we can apply here is parameters is keyed parameters. See here now. So take test case 3 to demonstrate the keyed parameters without missing on anything. You can pass values in any order. Order doesn't matter when you are using keyed parameters. So here, what do you say? The first one is age, you know that. So age equal to, you just assign age to the, use a key as a parameter. And this key should be exactly same as the parameter in your definition, function definition. Again, if you put age here, don't put age one here. This should match. And second one, some name equal to John. This is more like passing key value pairs and separated with assignment. That's all. This time, even though we are not following order, sorry, we are not even though we are not following order, still values reach exact destination or expected destination. Age goes to age and name goes to name. So this is much more better way of passing parameters. So right click, run this now. This time you can see name is John and age is 30. Still, even though I'm passing in, right? So you can see I'm not following order. Still, I'm able to make it what I am able to pass John to name and age to age. But in the second scenario, still it is missing on the order. Name is 30, age is John, which doesn't make sense. Because those in the second case and first case, these are position parameters. In the third case, we are using keyed. Always keyed is much more better way of passing parameters when you don't think you are following order. And the third one, this is idea about keyed parameters, friends. And one important rule with keyed parameters is make sure you are using the keys exactly same as parameters in the definition, function definition. You got it right, friends. Suppose you have one more variable. Suppose you have name, age, gender. One important thing I just want to show you. Suppose in the third case, I'm passing gender, something like male. I want to show you a rule here. I can remove this actually. Invalid. This is a valid calling. Okay. I'm passing third variable as male. If I see we are passing it properly because anything in quotes is string and where that's actually a valid one, but still it is throwing error. Why? Read the error. Positional argument are after keyed argument. Means there is a rule here. What is that rule? Rule is first positional. Positional means without keyed parameters. Always positional first positional parameters and after that we should have we shall have what friends are keyed parameters. This is the order. So when you are having both mix of both positional and keyed parameters, what is the order you should follow? Order is positional should be first and then keyed should be next. Means what? Take this gender, put it in the beginning, friends. Put here. Okay, comma. Now this should passed as a first parameter. Positional parameters always should be first in the order and then keyed parameters. And this is the rule. There is nothing like me or you or anyone do this. This is actually Python rule. This time you don't have error. Why? Because we are following the order here and we are following the rule. Positional parameter is in first place. After that, I have keyed parameters. Now, if I run this, this works perfectly fine. So, what is happening here?
Comma in
Okay.
calling.
Yeah. Yes, sir. I'm removing that. Now run this now. Again, there is a required positional.
There is comma after age in the definition, function definition.
Name, yeah, here also there
No,
is a
you
comma,
changed.
yeah. This comma, yeah. Now it should work. See, again there is error, no problem. We can
No,
still,
you changed the definition of the get person method, right? So test case 1 and test case 2 will fail.
yes, that is also true. Yeah. So yeah, we can fix this in this is also useful. Let's comment it for a while. How to fix this, we'll see in the third scenario, another scenario with the default parameters. But for now, let us test alone test case 3 here. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for that info. So yeah, even this one important point we had discussed in the beginning. What is that? Number of parameters should match in the color should match with the definition, with the parameters in the definition. So that is what missing on case 2, case 1 and case 2. That is why this error. This third thing should definitely work now. See here, I'm not printing gender. So if I print gender, gender also works. Let's do one thing. Print gender. And you can see gender as well. Now right click, run this. See here, gender is male or female, whatever you think is fit here, that you can pass here. So now this is the rule of passing mixed parameters. Always, which should be first, friends? Positional it should be first, and then keyed parameters should comes after that. And also another important rule is number of parameters in the color should match with number of parameters in the definition. If that is matching, again you just saw that few errors here. Okay, and suppose you pass 2 and you have 3 here, still that should pass that test case. Then what is that we should do? In such cases, we can use some default parameters. We'll talk about that in tomorrow's session, but this is all idea about today. We covered positional and key. Tomorrow we talk about default and variable length arguments, all that. I think this should give us a clear introduction to functions, and this helps you to understand all different things about function. Okay, we'll talk more about it in tomorrow's function, and I think we can also add that talk strings here. So just for testing purpose, while doing all this, I didn't declare that, but tomorrow I'll also show you, once you declare doc string, how that doc string helps, all that, just with small example as well tomorrow. Shall we stop here now? Right. So maybe you can also take this code. Let me just share this with you. This is for which one, friends? Just testing the rule of mixed parameters. That's all. So we'll stop here then. Okay. Thank you, friends.